I didn't know
You're
if this podcast was going to be like a video podcast, and I was sitting here going, "Man, I wonder if I should take off this hat or something."
oh,
I
you're
didn't
wearing the
know.
hat. Hey guys, welcome to 180 Drums. My name is Jake Nicole, and you are listening to the 180 Drums podcast. Now, today we have one of my favorite drummers, my favorite people, my favorite just straight up bros on the show. And I just said bros. It's true. I did just say that. We have Garrett Goodwin on the show. Now, Garrett Goodwin is the touring drummer for Carrie Underwood. He is going to offer you guys a ton of advice on not only networking in the music industry and how to be successful with, really establishing great relationships and getting your name out there, but he's also going to talk about some of his scariest moments on stage. He's going to talk about some of the best apps that he likes to use. He's going to talk about forgetting to plug batteries into his metronome and having some pretty crazy moments on stage and having to troubleshoot issues. He's going to share about all his drum gear for all you drum nerds, including myself. He's going to talk about his kit, his cymbals, his sticks, and we've got a couple Instagram questions that actually get answered for those that were reaching out through both Instagram and Facebook. And he's going to talk about why he sets up his drums the way he sets up his drums. This is it almost seems like a controversial topic. Some people seem frustrated by it. Some people straight up copy it. And I think either way, it's really cool because it's going to offer you guys a great perspective. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Garrett Goodwin to the show. Make sure that you reach out to this guy. He leaves his email in because he's absolutely crazy. So check out his email and send him an email. That's what I should have said. Send him an email. And he will get back to you. He's going to do his best to get back to you and answer some questions. He's excited to offer that. So head to 180drums.com/Garrett Goodwin. And we're going to be sharing a little bit on our website of pictures of him. He's also that hilarious hat that he was talking about in the opener. We're going to have some pictures of him wearing that hat, some great shots, close-up of his kit, of different gear, and of life on the road. So I already said without further ado, now I really mean it. Guys, Garrett Goodwin. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. We have Garrett Goodwin with us, and this guy is a good friend. He's a good buddy of mine. We had Garrett in earlier in 2015 at 180 Drums, and he filmed a whole bunch of lessons with us like a machine, this guy. And he's a good buddy. Garrett, welcome to the show. Man, we are so happy to have you on here.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you and hoping we can answer some questions and do this.
Let's be real, man. We're just a couple of drummers nerding out on drums and
That's right.
hanging out. So, dude, let's start with this right away. Before we get into your background, before we get into everything you've done, other than to preface it by saying you are currently not only the touring drummer for Carrie Underwood, you've done some recording for her as well, but you are a session musician in general, living out in Nashville and semi in Florida as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm mainly in Nashville, and it's hard to call one place home when you travel a ton, but yeah, I do call Nashville home at this point. So
Very cool. Let's talk right away about your setup, man. So you obviously have one of the most unique setups, and when I say obviously, you're gonna laugh because we just finished talking about obvious to who, right?
right.
I think it's obvious to a lot of drummers who have normal setups that when they see your setup, they're perplexed,
Yeah.
which is awesome. Why don't you tell us how you kind of got started setting up your drums the way you did, and then we'll run through your gear. So what was the origin of that?
You know, I always say that it's comfortable. It is a comfortable setup for me. A lot of people say, you set up like this because it looks cool, or people can see you because the drums aren't hiding you, things like that. And that's definitely not true because I'd rather be hidden in the back hallway playing drums. So,
Yeah, yeah.
it's definitely not that. It's comfortable for me. I growing up, I never took lessons. I never really had any mentor, no one around me, and I didn't have anyone that said, "Hey, this is how you're supposed to set up your drums."
Right.
So when I got my first kit, I just kind of threw it up, and everything was pretty flat at that point. And it has. I kind of, if you've seen me play or seen pictures, I tend to lean over the drums a little bit. So even when I'm sitting there, it feels pretty flat. I get up and I look at the drums and I realize they're completely ridiculous. But when I'm sitting there, if especially the snare, the first tom, those feel very flat to me. The floor tom, it's definitely, I can see that it's tilted where I'm sitting, but for whatever reason, it works. I don't know if it's the way I come around the drums or what it is, but it works with how it is. So that's kind of how it came about, and I know it's crazy and weird, but again, it's comfortable, and that's what I preach: is whatever's comfortable for you, do it.
Yeah, man, what I think's really cool too is that there's kind of just a freedom with the way you're setting up your drums. Like it's truly free from the perspective of you're just setting up them the way that you want to approach it, the way you feel most comfortable. And what's challenged me the most about that perspective is I kind of went home, dude. I think I told you this, and I'm sure you saw pictures because I think I was even tagging you laughing. Is I went home and I mimicked it to what felt comfortable, to like take the Garrett Goodwin extreme and then try and adapt it to what felt comfortable for me to get
Right.
inside your head. Like I do that with every guy that we have at 180. I end up mimicking their
That's
setup.
awesome.
I mimic their setup for at least a week just to get inside their head, usually after the fact, because I get to sit at the kit in the 180 studio
Right.
and actually experience it. Yours was a trip for me because you also play. What kind of sticks do you play?
They're two S's, so they're yeah, they're
An
they're ProMark.
entirely, oh, I love it.
Yeah, they're crazy, man. They're ProMark 2Bs, but they're I guess about an inch longer.
Yeah.
Uh, and again, man, it's comfortable. I go back to the 2Bs, and it's the throw is so different on them that it's odd for me. So
Wow. And you're holding your sticks pretty far back, right?
yeah, but I mean they do not even stick out the back of my hand. So
Gnarly. That is truly gnarly. Well, cool, man. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up right away because I love that story of you finding it in comfort.
yeah,
And I know, I will vouch for you right now that you are the last dude on the planet that is trying to do something to impress people. You are not that guy. So that's one of my favorite things about you, dude. Okay, cool, man. Let's talk about your actual kit setup. So you're playing DW drums. You just got a brand new DW drum set too, right?
I did. The kit before this it's a 26 by 18 kick drum,
Whew.
which I love. I love the 24. I love the 26, but for live, the 26 just sounds and feels huge. And then I actually this time, so I play two floor toms, a 14 and an 18, and I normally do a 14 by 12 and an 18 by 16, but I did a 14 by 10 and 18 by 14. And I randomly played a kit. I guess we were doing a TV show or something, so it was a rental kit, and that's what the sizes were. And it just felt, you can kind of manipulate a drum to sound similar. So like that's not a big difference in those two drums, a 14 by 10 or 14 by 12. But I think it was a feel thing more than anything. It gave a little more. Those drums gave a little more, and they were a little bit less to try to control at the end of the day as far as tuning. So I've played them a couple times, and I'm pumped about them right now. So
Very cool, man. And you're playing maple shells, right?
they are maple. Yep.
Anything special? Like I know the DWs that does a lot of VLT. Are all their drums that vertical timbre now?
I don't think so. They have so many things. It's so hard to keep up these days.
No
But
kidding.
I tried. What did I do? I had a jazz kit, the DW jazz kit for a little while, and man, I couldn't even tell you what it was because they've come out with 10 different things now, which is awesome. There's so many different options, but mine's just a standard maple kit, and to me, I don't know again if it's just a thing that of the past where it's what I've always played, so I'm comfortable with it, or I'm just not open to the new stuff. I'm not sure,
Right,
but
right,
I
right,
think
right.
it's just that I love the sound of those.
Cool. So, dude, you're playing, when it comes to the drums, you've got a 26 by 18, which is massive. What techniques are you using on a bass drum that big? Are you burying the beater or are you playing off the head?
I'm bearing the beater for sure. I've found that I have to put a little more inside the kick drum to make that happen, and it's
Okay.
obviously a little bit more work too. At the same time, to bury it in that big of a drum is a lot harder than a 20 or a 22 or even a 24. So
Yeah, no kidding.
it's definitely a little more work, but at the end of the day, it, it the sound is just so huge and feels so good that it's worth it to me. Work a
Amazing.
little
What
bit hard.
head? What are you just using a P3?
Yep, a P3. Yeah, that's what I've always used on there.
So for anyone who's wondering, that's a Remo Power Stroke 3, and that's a clear head you're playing?
I actually use it coated.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Why? Why so?
Um, you know,
It's warmer, that's for
it is
sure.
warmer. I think that's the biggest thing. And I I uh, turn my DW beater around so it's on the hard side.
Oh, so you're
So
using the
that
plastic. Cool.
yeah, and I find that with the coated head and the plastic side that it kind of I think maybe makes up for the clear head. Has a little bit
Interesting.
more of a punch, the brighter sound on the initial hit, but a little warmer in the drum on that end.
Right, that's really clever. So yeah, for anybody who's wondering about that, typically when you're using a coated head, it's definitely way warmer and you can miss out on the attack. But that's a really cool way to remedy it, man, is you're getting the warmth of the coated head and then you're trying to recreate the attack of the clear head because a clear head and that plastic side of the beater can be super thwappy, like a lot of point on that note for sure.
Yep,
Cool,
exactly.
man.
Yeah.
And then are you using the DW 9000 or 5000?
5,000. I've tried the 9 and it's too smooth. It's too light. I
You like to
like a
fight.
some yeah, I like a little bit of heaviness, you know. I want I want to have to kick it as hard as I can. I don't want it to do work for me, I guess.
Yes.
And again, man, I know I say this every time, but I think it's just a comfort thing. I think it's just something I've always used.
Yeah.
And the 9,000, it's too smooth. It's too fast for me. So
Well, for anyone wanting to see Garrett play entirely out of his element using a 22-inch bass drum, those lessons are available on 180 Drums.
that's right.
Throwing the sales pitch, so funny, man, because we had you in and we made you play our in-house kit due to all kinds of crazy last-minute logistics, but it's cool that you were still comfortable. You still pulled it off. In the studio, are you using a 26 as well?
Um, I always have a couple different options in the studio. I actually down the street from my house, I record at a buddy's house all the time. He has a studio in his backyard, and I leave a kit there set up, and it's with a 22
Oh
inch kit.
wow. Very
So
cool.
it's a little bit of a jump, but I have a 24 there as well. So sometimes we swap it out, and man, it's all about what the song calls for, or what the session calls for, you know.
Yeah,
So it's good to have
absolutely.
those options.
That's great, man. Well, let's go through a little bit more gear. I know that before we get into the cymbals, actually, let's talk about the toms as well. So on the kick drum, you're using a P3 on the batter head. The resonant head is what? Do you know?
Well, it's normally live the logo head,
Right, the
which
logo head.
the logo
Sold by
head,
Remo.
yeah, sold by Remo. I think it's just a one or two ply resonant head. I don't even know if I know exactly what it is.
Okay, cool. And then inside the bass drum, what are you placing in there?
I have the DW has those pillow systems. I don't know if you've seen those.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
I have those in there, and then normally I'll add just some sort of addition on the batter side. I'll push some whether it's a blanket or some towels or anything. I'll roll them up and put them right up against the batter side of the head. And again, that's just it feels a little better to sink in. If you're going to bury the beater, then to bury it into a pillow type feel is the best feeling in the world. So
Yes.
that's what I do there.
Dude, what I like about your setup as well is that it's very difficult to like you really have created a situation where playing too much isn't an option because the kit is not ergonomically set up in a way where you can like rip around it and it's
Right.
almost a limitation that maybe you've unconsciously created in a really productive way, if that makes sense to everybody listening. It's like when I sat at your kit, my experience, because a lot of people, most people have never sat at your drum set. So to kind of like relay that experience, just playing eighth notes around the drum set, just moving around like your basic, 80 beats per minute tempo, it felt really challenging to move around it, and especially with the sticks as well, and play a lot of things. It was like I had to really simplify my playing immediately if I wanted anything to translate. So that's one thing that I think is actually brilliant about the way you play. Is like I was describing to a friend the other day, I said, Garrett's playing is so cool because it takes so much thought out skill to play that few things and say so much. I think that's really cool. So for all you guys listening, I would encourage you to like maybe tweak with your setup, and like don't hurt yourselves. Don't do anything just for the sake of doing it, but really try and expand on your kit in a way where maybe for a couple days set it up in a way that makes it hard for you to get away with trying to just like escape into the playing with the world of just shredding. That can be such a dangerous world because we start to neglect feel and pocket, which is what you're all about, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, even as simple as my setup is, I'll take away a tom just to,
Right.
to make to make me
Yeah.
think a little bit different. And I know it is simple, and but it makes me. I feel like for me, big big drums and simple translates more for the music I'm playing, but also in arenas and different things like that. Because you start getting into all the busy stuff, and it doesn't translate. It just kind of sound. It can tend to sound like a mess if you're not careful.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so that's kind of been my mindset, and yeah, that's why I set up that way.
Amazing. And on your rack tom, are you using a coated emperor on top?
It is.
Okay.
I have a kit that I use the black suede emperors as well.
Oh, cool.
And I've tried a few different things on it, and that seems to be what's worked out the best. It to me, it's a good a good in between of a clear and a coated head is the black suede emperor is what I found.
Very cool.
Um, and so that for that specific kit, again, it works the best for it. So
And then just clear ambassadors on the resonant side of both toms.
yep, that's it.
Cool. Muffling. Let's talk muffling of your kit. For your toms, you are using which product, Garrett?
Drum tax, which is
Shameless plug. Shameless plug.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's they're the best, man. Honestly, I mean, they if you really look in depth of what they do and what all they've put into just one of those things, it's pretty insane. And just all that you can do with it, as far as cymbals, and it doesn't give you that direct pointed muffle, if that makes sense. It doesn't. It still lets the drum resonate like it's supposed to, and that's what I appreciate about it. It doesn't. Different parts of the drum don't sound like, oh well, this side's a little more muffled than this side, just because that's where you have the muffle that's on it. So drum tacks are pretty amazing, and plus they you can stick them on and they stay on a cymbal, they stay on anything, and you can pop them right off and put them on something else. So
And JC's a good dude. JC Clifford,
best
little
dude,
little
best
shout
dude.
out. He's a good dude. I haven't got to meet
Absolutely.
JC in person yet, but we've talked over the phone, I believe, because I feel like I've got to know the dude a little bit. So very cool stuff that they're doing, man. There's a lot of cool, semi-independent companies that are coming out doing awesome stuff. And another one of them is on your snare drum. What are you using on your snare, dude?
The big fat snare drum
Is that what
is
you're using these days?
yeah, sometimes.
Cool.
Yeah, and again, it's not like I use that all the time, but I'll use it for certain things. I'll use that, and the other thing is the snare weight. Again, it depends on what the thing calls for. I did an acoustic thing yesterday. More of an acoustic thing was broken down brushes and shakers, and I had the snare weight on the snare for that, and it was perfect. It just it muffled it just enough, and it made this kind of a thuddy sound to it. So it was great, man.
Very cool. Yeah, Matt Strickland at Snareweight is a good dude too. And we actually did an interview. I think I already mentioned this to you, but we did as well a podcast interview with Chris of Big Fat Snare Drum.
Right.
He's a really good buddy, man. Isn't Chris such a good dude?
Yeah, absolutely, man. They all are, man. They're all good dudes. Drummers
Man.
are good dudes.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy that we've got a bunch of good dudes. There's no need to trash talk anyone.
That's right. That's right.
That's awesome. Okay, dude, now cymbals. Let's go. Actually, wait, hold on. We didn't talk about your snare. What are you using? Are you allowed to talk about what you're using?
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because I've always struggled with snare drums, and I've always ended up going back to Superphonics, Ludwig Superphonics, and actually just recently I got when I got this new kit, I got a brass over chrome DW snare, and I got an aluminum DW snare, and I haven't had a ton of time to mess with them, but just the little bit that I have, I'm blown away, to be honest. Which I'm shocked, but the aluminum snare it's. I thought I was going to love the chrome over brass, but the aluminum one is the one that's really blowing my mind right now. So I haven't even switched out the DW heads to Remo heads yet. I've just literally thrown them down and messed with them. So
Wow.
we'll see what happens there, but I'm loving them so far.
Very interesting, man. So when you say that you originally, just to touch on that quick, I know that we've been so far just nerding out on this podcast about drums, but this is what people dig to hear, and I find it interesting too, man. We're drummers, you know. So
Right.
for your snare, when you were using the Superphonic, are we talking? I'm pretty sure I've seen you using 5.5s, right? 14 by 5.5
Yep.
deep,
Yep.
and then
I have both. I have a 6.5 as well, but
okay.
I use the 5.5 most of the time.
So 5.5 most of the time, and then your when it comes to tuning your snare, are you using anything special for snare wires, or is it just generic snare wires, 40 strand, 20 strand?
It's the 40 strand and the oh my gosh, I'm blanking right now,
That's
man.
okay. Is it pure
Pure
sound?
sound, pure sound. Yeah, 40 strand pure sound. I put that on pretty much every snare that I use. If I could put it on a popcorn snare, I would, because
Ah, yes.
there's nothing like it. Yeah, 40 strand pure sound. I'm using 90% of the time. I use a Power Stroke 3 on the snare head as well. Sometimes I'll use the CS dot. Again, it just
Cool.
depends on the snare, but
It's cool because both of those, the CS dot is a single ply head with a thicker mill in the center, a thicker like added on whatever. And I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure a CS dot's
no,
a
that's
single
it.
ply.
Yeah,
And then a Power Stroke 3 is a single ply, but it's got a ring. So they're kind of two different variations of a single ply head, which I think is what gives you a nice open sound that you're looking for. Right?
absolutely. Yeah, it's a good in between. You don't. It's not too much ring. It's not too much, but at the same time, it doesn't deaden it down too much where you're not getting anything out of it. So
And since we're talking about the snare, how do you like to tune your snare? And we had a question from who was it here? It was Joshua Alltop. He asked, how do you approach tuning live versus in the studio? So let's talk about that for a second with your drums. How do you like to go about tuning, each drum, and does it differ when you're playing in an arena versus playing in a recording studio?
yeah, absolutely. I found with a snare drum, it always it tends to be the same. In a studio setting, you like to have a few options. Different songs call for different snares, like I already said, but as far as tuning wise on a snare, pretty much the same goes for live and studio. Um, you might in the studio deaden it down a little bit if the song calls for it, but I'll normally crank the bottom head on a snare drum about as tight as you can crank it.
Cool.
It's actually something Chris McHugh, when we were on the road with Keith Urban, Chris McHugh taught me way back. I remember we were sitting messing with heads one day, and he literally took a screw gun and drilled down the bottom head, and he said, "I do this on every single one of my snare drums," and I've done it ever since. And
Wow.
it's pretty interesting to me. But
Like,
so,
what's the point where you say, okay, that is as tight as it goes? Is it
right,
like literally as tight as it goes, and you're like just hoping the head doesn't break?
I guess so.
Wow,
you know,
cool.
I think I think you can
Yeah,
kind of feel it out, knowing that all right, this is to the point. But my point is you tighten it down pretty good.
yeah,
And then as far as for me live playing, um, on the top, I like my snare to sink in, almost like my kick drum. I like
Mm,
it to feel loose. I know a lot of guys like a real tight snare where they can get a lot of ghost notes out of it and things like that. And for whatever reason, I like my snare to sink in. I like to
yeah.
feel that. I like to feel it give a little bit.
I'm with you
Um,
there, man. Well, on that note too, why would you like a 5.5 over a 6.5?
I
Like
know
in
it's
general,
interesting. It's
it
interesting.
is, yeah.
The biggest reason why is I
Height,
sit
height.
very, very low.
Yes, that's hilarious.
Yeah, and I can't. I literally have DW cut down my snare stands as much as they can, which is only an inch because past that you can't cut it down anymore. And they
Right.
cut down my snare stands an inch just because I can't get it low enough, and it's such a bummer because honestly, I prefer a 6.5.
Ah.
I'd prefer an 8 inch deep snare drum to be honest, but I couldn't. It would never work because I like I sit low. I like to have my snare low. I mean, so low that I constantly have a bruise on my leg because my fist hits my leg every time I hit the snare. So
Dude, Steve Augustine, one of the other founders of 180 Drums, Steve is the same way out with Thousand Foot Crutch, man. Like every hit, he's trying to punch his leg. That's the goal. It's just to have a sense of evenness and kind of a guide to let you know if you're hitting in the same spot.
exactly, yep,
So
same
you're not a
same.
drummer if your right or left thigh isn't bruised. You're not a drummer.
That's right.
Goofy, man. Goofy. Okay,
Yeah.
now cymbals. I'm probably gonna mess this guy's name up, but it looks like it's Mathieu. It's like Matthew in French. Mathieu Flagada. And that's
That's
my
good. I like
best. That was my best. Bonjour, je m'appelle Jacob. Comment
That's
s'appelles-tu?
great.
So that's Matt there. His name looks like it's Mathieu Frachon or something like that. So before I start sounding like I'm swearing, he asked what size are your cymbals? Like what are you? I think we had a couple questions about that today after we've been posting some videos of you. Is people right away like, what is your ride cymbal? What's your crash? Are you using two crashes or ride hats?
Yep, two crashes, a ride hat. The two crashes right now live I'm using they're Sabian AA medium crashes, um, a 24 and a 22, and I've that's where I'm at right now. I have an
So for your hats, they're 18 inch, you said 18-inch crashes?
no no for sorry for the two crashes it's a 24 and a 22,
Oh, okay, got you. For the
and
crash
those
cymbals.
are AA medium crashes.
Okay.
For the hats, yep, they're actually crashes, but they're 18 inch. Yeah, it's a an HHX explosion crash on top, and then an artisan crash on the bottom.
Cool.
And man, I went to the Sabian factory and sat for hours trying different combinations of tops and bottoms, and that's what I came up to, and
Cool.
I love it. So,
Try
and
and
then
describe the sound. Like you're going for that same thing. You want them to sink in and feel buttery. What were the characteristics like when you were spending hours? Obviously, you were looking for something. What was it?
yeah, I mean, for live, you don't want too dark of a cymbal. You don't want too bright of a cymbal. I don't love bright cymbals, so I was looking more on the darker side. And it's funny because I found that putting two crashes together as hats, there was always this, not always, there was sometimes this very odd ting, ting sound. Ting, that's the only way I
Hmm.
know how to explain it. And it was so strange because so many of the combinations had that ting sound. And
Hmm.
so that was something that I think that's what took most of the time in trying to figure out the best combination was for whatever reason I still have no idea why it would just produce that sound sometimes. So yeah, that's what I came up with is the explosion on top, and again, it's a thinner cymbal on the top and a little bit thicker on the bottom, and it just works. And again, I mean, that's my preference. And if I go in the studio, man, I'll take 13s, 14s, 15s. I'll have all the different options because there's a lot of people that don't prefer that at the end of the day.
Sure, sure, sure. That's awesome, man. And then for your ride cymbal, you said it's a 24-inch what?
It's a stage ride.
Cool.
Yeah, and actually, sometimes I use it's a 24-inch studio ride, and they're both AAX Sabians.
Gotcha.
So
Awesome, man. I'm pretty sure that's your setup then. That's all the gadgets. You have a couple shakers that you like to use. You have one shaker, and because you use your shaker quite a bit, right? You actually
yeah, a good
taught a
bit.
lesson with us about playing shaker because it's such an important part of playing it proper, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a pretty big shaker because again, I like the feel of it. You know, when you get an egg shaker in your hand, obviously you're gonna have to do that sometimes, but I like kind of a heavier thing, like a heavier stick, because you get a little more of the weight and the more of the feel with it.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I have a couple different a plastic shaker, metal shaker, a couple different things there.
It's funny, man. I think it's important that guys realize too, the reason your sticks are so big is because they're truly helping you play the drums. Like you could not use 7As and get the same sound out of your drum set, even if you were hitting twice as hard, because the stick is actually producing quite a bit of the note and the sound itself, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it does to me it does so much of the work for me,
Yeah.
and it might seem like a little more work at first, but I think once you build up to it and once you get used to it, it's less work at the end of the day. So,
Yes. Cool.
and I actually use a natural finish stick, um, and then when I play live, when I play all the time, I actually wrap my sticks, and I get that question asked a lot. Is what do you wrap your sticks with? And you know they have drummer's tape and all that, but I actually just get tennis racket tape, and I wrap my sticks with that, and it works
Huh.
perfect. And it's just a little bit less. I don't do it all the time, but when I'm playing night after night, I'll do it just because it's a little less wear and tear on your hands.
Right. Dude,
So
very cool. And in the studio, if you're say you're playing a pair of 13-inch hats, because you threw that out there, I didn't say that. I didn't put those words in your mouth. If you're playing a 13-inch set of hats, are you using the same sticks and like are you playing much differently in that instance?
Yeah, you know, I find that when I'm using smaller cymbals, I do not always, but I'll tend to use a smaller stick. Sometimes I'll
Hmm.
use the 747
Yes.
747Bs. Is that
Yep.
right?
747B, yeah, which
Yep,
feels like probably feels like a 5B, maybe a little bit thicker, but it's long still, right?
exactly. Yep, exactly. So that again, it's not the most comfortable because it's not what I do all the time. But I'll either do that or man, I'll even use hot rods. Or a lot of times when I'm using the smaller stuff, I'll end up using hot rods or brushes or different things like that.
Yeah, very, very cool, man. Okay, that's awesome, dude. Well, if I think of anything else, I'm definitely going to ask you at some point about the drums, but I think we've pretty much covered it. I think the only other thing I've seen you using is you'll use like those, I think it's made by ProMark, the sizzle thing you can attach to your cymbal, like it's got a felt on it.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah, it's
something
a
you just use for acoustics?
yeah, pretty much just for acoustics. For a little while, I had an extra cymbal set up with it on it because we were just doing a lot of ballads and things at the time. But
Yeah,
mainly, I just use it for acoustic stuff. I'll have an extra cymbal sitting there with it on it, just because it can add some taste. It can add draw the cymbal out a little bit longer than maybe just hitting it with a brush.
right.
It kind of makes it fade for a while, so it's a cool sound.
Cool. All right, dude. We're gonna return to the drum set because I want to get away from drums for a little bit and just get people filled in on you as a person. It's funny, man, because the podcasts that I like to listen to the most are typically podcasts about lifestyle or podcasts about. You and I talked about this a little bit, but it's like I like business podcasts, things that are like kind of challenging your perspectives or offering you, cool advice on routines and the habits of successful people. So I like that we covered tons of drum stuff, but what I'm interested is like, in your day-to-day life, dude, I don't even think I've asked you this personally. Do you have a routine? Do you have like a certain list of things that you judge every day by? For me, it's a lot of silly things. Like I make sure that I read every day. I want to try and have some type of workout every day. I want to practice a little bit on, a few different things every day. What about you, man? Do you have a practice routine?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're on the road a lot or home, it's a routine can tend to be very hard. Um, but there is, a few important things, on a day that, for me personally, I try to do. And like you said, I like to try to get up as early as I can and read for a little bit. Um, try to get a workout in, but that's at the same time, when we're on the road playing every night, it's like, that's a, that's a workout in itself. So
No
I
kidding.
step away from it a little bit, but, I'm getting it at some point of the day. But yeah, reading is super important to me. Family is another thing that's very important to me, and it's something that a lot of guys ask me about as far as balancing that with touring and traveling and always being gone. And it can definitely be a challenge, and it definitely takes giving on both sides of any kind of relationship, whether it's a wife or a friend or anything.
No
You got
kidding.
to take the
Yeah.
time for that. So when I'm on the road, I definitely like to take a good amount of time in my day and make sure that I'm thinking about important people and contacting them. And man, I actually have a list of people on my phone that I like to, even just shoot a text a few days a week and just be
Hmm.
like, man, how you doing? Or, whatever. And, that's as far as friends and things that way. Cause that's so important, because what I've found is um, when you're gone on the road, it's funny because
Hmm.
people, everybody's life keeps going on.
Right.
So say
Yeah.
you leave in January for a tour, and you're gone, you're out on the road, and you're hanging out with these people every day, your family, on and on and on. Well, these people still live every day.
Yeah.
For the next however many months you're gone, you come back and you kind of can feel like, almost you could feel left behind in a way. You could
Yeah.
feel like, wait, all these people are, kind of doing this now, and on and on and on. So I've learned that keeping up with that is super important for me, anyways, because you can lose touch in a sense.
Yeah. Quickly. It happens fast, man.
Absolutely. So as far as routine every day, that's a super important thing to me. Like I said, reading, working out, doing those things. I think that routine is a great thing to have, no matter what.
Very, very cool, man. That's awesome, dude. Yeah, it's funny. It is hard to get into, and it's cool to hear you say that because it's true, man. Like if you want to keep your family, if you want to keep people close to you, it's an effort, right? I think that's something we can undermine. And for anyone who's listening to this, that's just like dying for you to get to the business advice, I think that's a really humbling, eye-opening thing to hear. Is that there's so much sacrifice involved. Like forget sacrifice of hard work and your time. There's sacrifice of relationships. You know.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Do you have a practice routine? Like, so say I know that you're on the road and you're playing every night. The last thing you're probably worried about after having gone through all the rehearsals and being on tour is like, "Ah, I gotta sit in my hotel room and play paradiddles, you know?
Right. Right.
Um, what when you do have time though, when you're home and you're like, man, I've got some time to sit at the kit. What's some of the stuff that excites you, or some of the drummers that you're looking at where you're like, man, I want to be able to do more of that?
Absolutely. When I'm on the road, the biggest thing I find is stretching is a big thing. Playing every night,
Cool.
it's not like I'm sitting in my hotel room like you said, but stretching is just it's so important. Especially if you're playing, like a workout. I've had people say, "Man, you work as hard as like an Olympian," things like that, which I think is a joke, but it's true. I mean, it really is a full body thing as a drummer. So I think stretching is super important, and I didn't find that important when I was younger, but I'm finding out now how important it really is. And people used to say that to me, and now I'm
Yeah.
going, man, I really should have listened to you. So nothing crazy, just essential stretches. Just hands and fingers, if nothing else. And as far as being home and just being inspired, and when I'm not playing a ton, is it sounds so boring, but I will literally still go sit with a click at different tempos. Man, I'll start as slow as I can and go up to as fast as I can. I will just sit and do the most basic groove with a kick, snare, and a hat, and just lock it in as much as I can to where the click disappears. Because again, it's such an important thing.
Hmm.
the chops and all that. It's very important. It's a lot more fun than sitting with a click. But I've found how much that just sitting with a click. And so when you are playing shows live, when you are doing things live, that's not even something you're having to think about or be conscious of. It's there. You're locked in with it. There's no question about it.
Hmm.
And even with sessions, I mean, it's the coolest thing when you do a session and you have a producer say, "Man, I didn't really have to move anything." You know what I mean? Just
Right.
because you're so
Yes.
locked in with the click, and everybody in the band's playing right along with that. It's such a cool thing. So as far as practicing, I just find that that's so important. Even at this point in my life, like I still will literally just sit with a click. And man, being inspired, I'll watch Abe Laboriel Jr. is my favorite drummer in the world. So I'll watch Paul McCartney DVDs, different things like that.
Oh, dude,
Just
he is so good. He is so
he
good. It's
is.
mental.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that I mean, he inspires me. Tons of drummers inspire me. I mean, just getting on Instagram and going through people's profiles inspire me. Honestly, man, like watching your videos inspire me on
Oh,
Instagram.
get
Like,
out of here. This
I'm dead
guy.
serious, man. I'll pull them up and I'm just like, gosh, I need to practice more.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Either that
right.
or just sell my kit.
Oh, get out of here. It's funny, man. We got back into drums way sooner than I anticipated because
Sorry.
no, it's my fault. I asked the question and I laughed right after I asked it. But since we're here right now talking about, I love that you're talking about studio stuff. One of the questions that one of our online buddies here asked, and his username is at preach EPRITCH underscore drums. He said, how to play with a loop that has a drum part in it and not play over the song. So, like, what do you do? What techniques do you use to effectively do that? Because that's a big part of what you do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. With a lot of music these days, there's a lot more of programmed drums and programmed loops, and even with the whole worship side of it in church music, there's the Hillsong stuff and different things like that is a lot of that stuff.
Yeah,
And
no kidding.
and I've even found that when I'm home, I'll play at church and different things like that, and I've found learning these songs like how are these guys doing this? And then I'll go watch something and there's two drummers and then loops going
Nah.
at the same time. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do here? You know what I mean? So I found that as far as that goes, taking the most prominent and the most solid and the most uh, important part
Yes.
and I guess your opinion of the song is kind of how I approach it.
Man,
Um,
yes. I mean, not to cut you off because you're the one giving the advice on that, but I had a student the other day trying to play a Hillsong part, and there's clearly because they do a lot of aux drum stuff, which is what you're
right,
describing. Bethel's
right,
latest record is the same way. And truly, what I told him is like, man, you got to think about what matters, and what matters is usually the kick and the snare. And like, don't worry about all those extra tom things that are happening while there's a hi-hat groove. Like, focus on locking in the four on the floor if that's what that song calls for, and
right.
making that work.
Exactly. And same goes for when, you're playing a song with a lot of loop parts. Try to find that core of the song, of the drums. Try to find that core and um, and again, don't overplay. Play the part, play what fills in between those loops. Um,
Hmm.
and that is definitely something that takes a little bit to get into and listen to and dig into. But again, that's why playing with a click is so important. That's why sitting with a click is so important because if you're playing with a loop that's a pretty busy or heavy loop and you're overplaying or you're not locked in with that click, then it's going to sound like a disaster at the
Yeah.
end of the day. So that's why I preach that at the same time. So
No kidding, man. Oh, that's awesome, dude. Another question we had regarding being in the studio was Caleb Job asked, "What's your approach to phasing when you're recording?" So I'm assuming that he truly meant phasing and didn't mean phrasing, but let's answer both those. What's your approach to phasing? How do you
phasing is far, what do you mean
phase?
by
How do you prevent phase? If that's what he's asking, I don't know if he maybe left it in R by accident, but is there anything specific you do to prevent phase? So maybe part of that is that your snare, because it's on a huge angle, that probably changes the way things are tweaked in phase.
right? Absolutely. The studio down the street that I was telling you about is he went to Berkeley.
Oh
This guy that
yeah.
owns the studio and all this, so he's way into that stuff. And I remember the first time I went in there, and he was like, "How you're setting up your drums so crazy?" But he's crazy about the overhead mics being the same distance from the snare drum as each other. So
Yes.
he literally keeps a tape measure on him at all times. It's really
Cool.
funny. And he will measure down from the left overhead to the snare and then the right overhead to the snare. And he swears that if you do that, then you won't have a phasing problem.
Right.
And I've other than that, I've never. That's kind of something I leave up to the producer. I guess if I'm going in doing it myself and there is no producer, I'm just recording some tracks. I take on that same thing that I've learned from this guy down the street. I just make sure that those overheads are the same distance from the snare. As far as angle, I haven't found that it's affected it too much.
Cool.
I've never had an issue as far as that goes. So.
Very cool, man. That's great. Yeah, and then with phrasing, I'll answer that for you. I think your approach to phrasing is that everything is less is more. You're trying to say as much as you can with as little as possible.
Absolutely. Yep. That's it, man.
From the words of Garrett Goodwin himself. Sheesh.
That's it.
Um, okay, Jeff Randall asks, he says, yes, Garrett's a big proponent of networking. Could you ask him if there's any books, resources out there that have helped him with things such as networking in the music business? Gee, Garrett, tell us about that, man. That's kind of interesting.
It is interesting.
It's
um,
interesting. I'm not making fun of you, Jeff, just so you know.
no, I actually know Jeff. That's really funny that he commented that. I've actually sat down with Jeff and played some drums, and you should actually check him out. He is an
I know
insane.
Jeff. Totally know Jeff. He's commented on a bunch of stuff with 180. He's
Oh
great.
my gosh,
He's
he's
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man. I mean, it's crazy because these days you can, as far as networking, it's pretty wild that you can literally get online and contact pretty much anyone you want. I mean, if you
Hmm.
have a drummer you look up to, you can probably find his email address or his Facebook or his Instagram or something and contact him, which is the coolest thing in the world. So that's not something that 20 years ago, anyone could have done,
No
which is
kidding.
pretty
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, even 180 drums, different things like that. That's such an awesome thing or podcasts like we're doing right now. That it's so cool that
Yeah.
we're that in touch, that close to, people that we look up to and peers and things like that. So, as far as networking, it all kind of goes hand in hand. Instagram, YouTube, just being a good person, being a good dude. Not being overbearing, not being too much. If you have an Instagram account, post videos of yourself playing. Go talk to other drummers that are playing. Go post on their things. Because that is networking at the end of the day. Networking doesn't mean you have to go, to every show that comes to town and try to, somehow contact someone that's there. It's so tangible now. It's right there in front of you online where you can contact anyone you want. You can post anything you want. It's crazy. So
Yeah.
as far as that goes, that's the biggest way, in my opinion. And as far as books and different things like that, there's so much stuff out there, and hopefully there's going to be some more stuff soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, it's cool because I think that I know that maybe I'm giving away too much, but just to share a little, I think that you have a lot of great insight, and I know that that's something that's on your mind is sharing a little bit about your own experiences in a larger way. And I would just encourage everybody, if you're listening to this podcast at a later time, or if you're listening to it close to the date of release, I would just encourage you to keep your eyes on what Garrett's doing and really pay attention to the things that he talks about because you're someone who I think has a great perspective on, not only trying to put yourself in the right place for the right times, but preparation for the right time, attitude and skill, and how those things differ and how they vary and how they work in tandem. And I'm really impressed with you, man, and your thoughts on all this because I know that when you were at 180, you and I spent a lot of time off camera just talking about those experiences and being excited that we both related, to attitude and things that matter so much more than just your chops, you know?
Absolutely, man. I appreciate that. Appreciate those kind of words. But it is so much more than the playing. When you start digging in, it's so much more of the kind of person you are, and the kind of person that other people want to be around. If you're touring
Absolutely.
with people, it's so important that you can get along with people. As simple as that. So
Yeah. Well, man,
absolutely.
I would encourage, like, if you guys ever are out somewhere and you run into Garrett, superstar drummer, please go say hey to him in person because the first thing you're going to learn about this guy is that there's no ego. Garrett is like the farthest thing from someone who thinks super highly of himself, and you're just genuinely excited to meet people, dude. So those are all awesome qualities. And before I make your head explode with
Yeah.
continuing to talk, yeah, right.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Let's move on. See, I told you guys. See, he's uncomfortable. I love it.
Come on, man. Come on.
Come on. Dude, what was in the name of terror? What was one of your scariest moments on stage?
Oh my gosh. Uh, on the last tour we were on, uh,
Oh no.
yeah, the about two. So on a big tour, most things are tied in together. So when you press, say you're running tracks or click even alone, it's all kind of tied in with lights and state. Say there's a moving stage or different things like
Now, are
that.
you firing that?
I used to. I now my drum tech actually does. So he sits right behind me and he runs the whole thing all night. So it's two laptops and I mean one is there just in case the other one goes down. So
That
just
dude
because
has
it
the scariest job
no
in,
kidding.
yeah,
You're telling me.
dude.
So yeah, so on the last tour, the second song into a 2 hour show, the for whatever reason the computers crashed, like just completely went down, and so that's when I guess everything kind of goes on me in a sense. So I actually have a metronome right next to me, and I had this grand idea always that all right, I'm gonna have every tempo of every song um, tapped into this metronome to where I can just click to the next song and I can click it off and go.
Absolutely brilliant. Of course.
Well,
Why wouldn't you? Well,
well, that was my idea, but this was maybe 50 shows into the tour. I'm like, oh, it's never gonna happen, whatever. Well, the metronome's sitting there, but uh, for whatever reason, I never paid attention to it. So it's batteries are dead, like it's not coming on. I'm
beautiful.
like,
Perfect.
awesome.
Just according
Well,
to plan.
yeah, I'm glad this thing's been sitting here every night of life for no reason. So
What kind of metronome do you use when it is plugged in full of batteries?
it's the Boss.
DB90.
That's it. That's the one, man. It does everything. It does everything. That's a good one.
It'll even talk to you. It'll count to you.
It will even talk to you. That's right.
Man, yeah,
Um,
she's got a nice voice. She's great.
yeah.
Lucy. Lucy's beautiful.
That's it.
Or I should say Deborah, DB, right?
There you go, Deborah. Old Debbie.
Debbie, DB, good old Debbie, yeah. So what do you do in that moment? What happened? This
So
is
yeah.
like, what? Do you remember what venue you're in? Am I asking too much? Are we gonna pull up some YouTube footage here? Like,
No, I wish I could remember. I'm sure someone I know would remember. I could not tell you where we were, but
oh man,
man, it's one of those things where I don't think a soul in the audience ever knew a thing.
right.
And that's why you have months of rehearsal, and that's why you sit and play with a click all day long because I didn't have a click, I didn't have a metronome, but I had to count off every song and pray that I was close to the tempo of the song. And I think it's just because I do sit with a metronome all the time and because I
Wow.
will play with the song over and over that it just naturally comes. So one song ends and I'm used to hearing the count off for the next song, and I was just having to do it
Wow.
like nothing was going on. And
And when you're doing that, man, like I'm actually really interested in that because I've had tons of moments on stage. Are you now deciding, okay, I'm going to keep time during all the parts that I'm not playing as well? Are you keeping time on the hats? Are you keeping time on the ride
absolutely,
cymbal?
yeah, absolutely. Because at that point, um, if there's a middle of the song where the drums cut out and it's just acoustic guitar, it's like, he's got to know where it sits. So I sit there. I normally will keep time on the hat, is what I do. And
Yes.
even say we play the Grand Ole Opry as an example. Nobody has ears on stage. It's just very like run and gun. You hop up, you play your 3 songs, and you walk off.
Hmm.
And so I'll just walk up with a metronome and I'll plug my ears into the metronome. So I count off every song and I keep time in between all those areas. Or like we don't have tracks, for example. So I will maybe at the beginning of a song where there's normally a little loop track. I'll play a loop type thing, just with a kick and snare and hat or different things like that. So you
Cool.
just kind of have to make work, but you do have to think about the other guys in the band too and go, all right, well, I've got to, now I become the drummer. Now I become the one that keeps time where everyone's watching. So,
Right.
so yeah, man, that night was it. I think we got 75% through the set, and then the computers kicked
Great.
back on or whatever, and we went back. But for that, probably hour was a little stressful for me, I have to say. But we got through, and that's the thing, man. I mean, at the end of the day, the average person sitting out there has no idea, and that goes for another thing I'll say to do with that is, say you're playing and you mess up, you drop a stick and you fall, like just something, or you don't nail something right, man. 90% of the time, people aren't going to hear that. So don't let it get in your head. Don't get in your own head, because I found that's something I talk to with guys all the time is I'll have them come into the studio and they'll mess up a part. I'll be like, all right, play this down, and they'll mess up one part, and then you can watch them get in their own
Yes.
head,
Yeah.
and they'll just fall apart the rest of the song, and then they'll
Huh.
come back in, and I'm like, all right, man, you could have acted like you meant to do that first thing, but you got in your own head. So it's such
Hmm.
a huge thing of just like keeping your cool, like keeping it cool, keeping your head together, and not getting in your own head, just going, you know what, this is what's supposed to happen. It's happening, and I'm gonna roll with it and make it work.
Cool. That's very cool, man. What's that saying? If you make a mistake once, it's rock and roll. If you make a mistake twice, it's jazz.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. That's good. I've never heard that, but I like it.
That's it, man. So, you have two approaches. You either just totally, shrug it off, or you just do it again and then you pretend it was what you meant to
That's
do.
it. That's it. I love it. I love it.
Goofy, man.
So true.
Um, okay, dude. That's great insight, and it's funny. It almost makes me think like maybe because I've been in situations too where you have someone who like the other thing is if your drum set's not loud, like if your mix, the mix of your kit in someone else's ear isn't very loud, they're gonna have to really have their eyes on you. Maybe
Right.
almost a solution. Like I'm more thinking for myself. I'm definitely not trying to offer you suggestions or anyone that's in a live situation, but what could be an alternative to something like having to keep time where the audience can hear you keeping time is maybe even having like a some type of trigger sample pad, so like an SPDSX or anything that's over there that has like a click sound that's dialed only to musicians' ears that you could play manually if you didn't want to have to play
Right.
the hi-hats loud. It's just like I'm just thinking about that in the moment, like what's an alternative to because the thing that gets me the most is times when a click's gone down and I have to keep time. Sometimes it feels like the only thing that might be obvious to the audience is that it's awkward that the drummer's playing over an
Right.
entire section that's meant to be more sensitive, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's just an idea, a free idea for everybody. It's free. Take it,
No,
run with it.
that's a good idea. It makes complete sense. That's great.
Implement it before me because I've never done it. But dude, what is here's a quick fun question for you. What's one of the best $20 or less purchases you've made lately?
Oh my gosh. Let's
It could
see.
be anything. It doesn't have to be drums. It could be anything. It could be like, man, I bought this app.
Well, you say app. The one of the I think it's free. It's an app called Tempo. It's a metronome, and it's saved me many times. So
Amazing.
that's a good one. Gosh, that's a tough question, man. That is a tough question.
Hmm.
Yeah, let's
What
come
about
back to
myself?
that.
Yeah, we'll come back to that one. Let me think about me. I'm trying to think even for myself because it is so tough. Probably some books. Books are probably the best purchases I've made. I'm not trying to make you say what I'm saying though, because I've done that to you a
No,
few
no,
times
no.
already. Like the app thing, I just did it. Tell me,
Right.
like an app, and then I've set your mind up to think app. But
That's it.
I'm trying to think even for myself, man. I mean, there's so many cool things that like I find sometimes it's purchases that are under 20 bucks can transform your life. Like, a really good pair of socks, Sometimes it's like that
Yeah.
is just the greatest thing in the world. It's so stupid. But
Hey, I have a hat that my wife literally wants to throw away because I wear it every day of life. So
it's
see,
so
you're triggering all kinds of things in my head
there
now.
you go, man. I'm guessing you probably paid more for that hat. Is it your Angels
No,
hat? It's super weird that I feel like I can picture this hat. Is it a black hat? What is it?
no, no. It's just a green hat. It's a
That's
green
hilarious.
ball cap. I mean, it's nothing. It means nothing. It's just this stupid hat that I don't want to do my hair on a day, so I'll just throw the hat on every day of life.
Amazing.
I
When
didn't know
you're
if this podcast was going to be like a video podcast, and I was sitting here going, "Man, I wonder if I should take off this hat or something."
Oh,
I
you're
didn't
wearing the
know.
hat.
Oh,
Dude,
I'm wearing the hat.
I
All
want a picture of this hat for the show notes. 100%.
right, I can
That's
do
so
that.
funny. I also actually, while I'm thinking about it, I wrote it down, but I want to get some pictures too of the hand stretches that you do so that anyone interested can check out, just a couple ways you stretch your hands. I think we actually cover that in the video lessons at 182. I'm pretty sure I asked you at one point and we went through some stretches. Um,
Yep,
I'm actually positive that we did that.
yep.
But maybe we'll just grab some clips straight from that. Either way, in the show notes, guys, check that out. Dude, what's one of your most prized possessions? Is it this hat? Is this hat the most prized possession to you?
Oh my gosh, man, that's honestly a really tough question for me. I there was a day where I literally like my drums meant so much to me. Like
Right. Yeah, I
people
do
would touch
know.
my drum, like pick up my drums too, and I'm like, no, like just
Just put it
like
down.
yeah, like I don't want it to get messed up. And I don't know if it's just time or life or what, but I've gotten to a point where like material things just like they don't mean much to me. I don't know. It's really
Yeah.
strange. I I don't know what it is. I don't know. I just don't really care about things like that. I guess I could say
Hmm.
that I'm not sure what I would do without my phone.
Yeah,
And I
that's a
know a
great
lot of
point.
people could say that, and I wish that I didn't have to say that, but it's true. I mean, and not that I even talk on the phone a lot, but just having it, it's like the one thing that you
Right.
always have with you, you know?
Yeah, for sure,
So
man. Okay, that's cool. That's a great answer. It's funny, I feel the same way. I used to really care about the drum collection that I had or, what I was playing at the moment and having all the right cymbals and all that stuff. And maybe we're discouraging a ton of you drummers. Listen, if you're out there and you were so excited to hear what gear Garrett's using, that's awesome. I'm actually jealous because in some ways I miss how much fun that was. I
right.
miss the excitement of going down to my drum set and I remember like lying on the floor in front of my drums finding cool angles to take pictures where you're like, "Oh yeah. Oh, look at
That's
this
awesome.
angle,"
Right.
But
Yeah.
nowadays, I'm in the same boat. I can walk downstairs and not like I don't change my drum heads. I don't even care a lot of
Right.
times. And lately, I find, I'm actually interested in hearing if this is similar for you because I feel like we share a lot of these similar quirky things like books and, now I sound like we have a bromance on the side, but long walks on the beach,
Yeah, those
shoot,
things.
picnics with your wife's picnic company, which I actually want to ask about that. Is that still a
Right.
thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Would have been
it's
awkward if not, I guess, huh?
a little bit, but no, it's definitely still a thing, man. It's a constant thing. My wife is constantly working on many things, so she's actually working on a hat line right now too. So, and not like the hats that I wear.
Ah,
But
cool.
she's working on a hat line and a couple other things. So she's quite the little entrepreneur.
Ooh, when you say little, is she like 5 feet tall or?
Well, she'd be mad at me, but yeah, she's 5'3", so she
There you
says
go.
5'3" and a half, but
Lies. Those are all lies.
yeah,
Dude, lately, it's funny, man. Lately for me, material stuff is I'm trying to be actually intentional, but also making it less interesting. I find I'm more interested or prone to be interested in like a pair of boots or clothes. Silly as that
Right.
is, I think you and I goof talking about All Saints because we were both
Yeah,
All
we
Saints
did.
fan.
We did.
Sick clothing company, you guys got to check them out. But at the same time, aside from the material things, trying to get away from that, what I've noticed that I'm most interested in is atmosphere, having rooms or having a vibe in
Right.
a place. So I'm way more interested, and it doesn't have to be fancy. I don't have to have like a super nice couch in my room. But for me, it's like really having a space lately. I've been really interested in creating spaces in my house, like having an office space that's got a standing desk. That's something that matters a
Absolutely.
lot to me. It's
Yeah.
really like improve, I guess things that improve my life, like genuinely improve my life, not because people think differently of me, because let's be honest with clothes, if you're comfortable in your clothes and you feel good about yourself, then that's enough, right?
Right.
For some
Yep.
people, like my father, who's an engineer, he's totally happy wearing clothes that aren't super relevant, you know?
Right.
And for me, I do enjoy wearing clothes that make me feel good, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's not consuming. But in the same way, it's like, man, lately I'm really interested in like having a room where there's some books around, the lighting is warm. I've got some, I've got like a record, like a vinyl player now that I have in a room. It's like all those things, some great pictures on the wall.
Absolutely, man. Creating a
Vibe.
vibe. It's creating a vibe. Like
Hashtag
honestly,
mood.
yeah, it's totally creating a mood and a vibe. And you say that, and I think about even when I practice drums. It's like
Dude.
I love to have a vibe happening when I'm playing. Like
Yes.
or recording in the studio. It's funny. There's this producer that I've worked with a good bit. His name's Dwayne Laring, and he is all about the vibe. He
Cool.
he wants to create a moment. He wants to create an atmosphere. And if he's not, or if it's not happening, then he'll literally walk out and be like, "All right, we're coming back to this in an hour. We're coming back
Cool.
to this," because he wants to create an atmosphere to be creative, and
Yeah.
um, and that is so much with vibe and the feeling of where you are and the place you're in.
Dude, that's awesome, man. That's very, very cool. Okay, on that same note, that's kind of touching on to something, so to segue into it, do you have any things that are like things lately that have been bringing you a lot of joy that you would call maybe a life hack? So like a shortcut to get to a place where you feel like there's, some maybe serenity or like a little bit of an escape.
Hmm.
For me, man, cup of coffee, a book, and the corner of a warm couch is a hack for me. It's like an escape where I get away. Maybe that's breaking the term, but
Right.
what about for you?
No, absolutely. I mean, I don't. A place that I love, a thing that I love to do is I love to, and I'm not saying this in any kind of way to say like I have this, but I have on my house, I have a rooftop deck on the roof,
Cool.
like literally on the roof of my house. So there's it for me in the last 6 months, it's been the greatest thing for me just to
Hmm.
like in the morning or evening, just to go up there and sit and even with nothing, with like no books, no phone, nothing, just to kind of like sit and take everything in and think has been the
Great.
greatest thing in the world for me. And I'm not really sure what I'm going to do when I don't have that anymore. I guess I'm going to find another little place to go sit. But that to me has been unbelievable for me. So
Very cool. Man, I think it's important, and I know that we're as drummers, maybe drummers are like, man, really, we're talking about rooftop patios right now, dude. Here's the truth: the most valuable thing that you guys do is not, and that Garrett does. I told you this so many times, Garrett, because we've had a lot of deep chats, late at night on the beach. But we've had all these deep chats, and the thing that I remind you of the most, and I remind every drummer that I come in contact with nowadays is the most valuable thing you do is not your promotion. It's not the way you play drums, even. Like, truthfully, the most valuable thing you do is thinking. Everything that you do is a byproduct of the way you think. If you think you suck at drums, you just described a situation where drummers were in the studio, their playing wasn't the issue, their feel and all these things weren't the issue. It was that they got into a pattern of thinking and they couldn't get out of it, and it changed everything. Forget your good feel, forget your nice sounding drum kit and your great attitude. all that stuff goes out the window and you lose your attitude when you start to think you're a loser, you know?
Yep.
So the fact that you spend every day in probably somewhat of a meditative moment of just thinking about life, thinking about what you're grateful for, thinking about what you want to accomplish that day, those are the things that translate the most into success, you know?
Absolutely. Yep. That's it, man.
Very cool, dude. What's been one of your biggest realizations, in your career?
Um, you know, it kind of all ties in with what I've been talking about, but just what we've been talking about, what's really important at the end of the day.
Right.
Drums are amazing, and drums are this creative outlet that I couldn't imagine not having.
Hmm.
Music in general. It's funny because I'll come across people that, like, even my mom. My mom, she doesn't like, she loves music, but she doesn't listen to music, and I can't even comprehend that, you know. And so as far as playing an instrument, like, me and my dad always talk, because my dad's the polar opposite. He, I think, sends me more music and artists, new artists that I've never heard of, than I send to him, and he's just always sending.
Wow.
He loves it, man. Like, he loves it, but he doesn't
That's
play
special.
any instruments, and he it's like, I can tell it's frustrating for him. He'll see me do something on TV or something, and he'll call me and be like, "That has to be so much fun." Like,
Oh,
I'm
dude, that is
so
so
jealous.
special, man.
Yeah, but yeah, so that's such an important thing, and I appreciate it so much, having that, and having music, and having that outlet. Um, but it might sound cheesy, but kind of tying in with that, it's like having family, and having those things are such important things in your life,
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and again, it's kind of you can kind of separate it, but at the same time, it all goes together. At the end of the day, music, if it's your job, it's your life, so uh, if you're just playing drums, and you don't have it, and you're like, man, I would give anything if I could just play drums in a band, or for an artist, or whatever, and you don't have that, and you just think, you know if I don't ever have that, then my life's never going to be complete. That's not true, because it's the grass is always greener. There's always a perspective.
Yes.
You're always gonna you'll get to a place, and you'll want something else. You'll have a goal set, and then you'll get to that place, and you'll have another goal, which is awesome. Like, that's part of having drive and being driven in life. So yeah, man, I think that all kind of ties in together with that.
That's amazing, man. That's such great insight. And again, what I think is so cool is that you're so transparent, like in case anyone missed that, about the fact that you two are in a situation where you've been playing with Carrie for close to a decade, if not a decade. And that is a really massive gig, and people probably feel like their life would be complete. But just like you talked about going out on the road and life going on, you accomplish things and then life goes on. And over
Sure.
time, it kind of everything kind of tries to, and I think it's a good thing because that's the only way we grow, is everything always trying to stabilize itself and become normal, right? So
Absolutely.
like, maybe share a little bit about your experience and how, and maybe where you're headed, like where you're headed in your career and how you're still striving.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember a while back sitting down and just thinking, and I remember a day where I used to say, man, I just want to play for an artist. Like, if I could just play for a big artist, like, I don't need to be in a band. I don't need to do like that whole thing. I just, like, it'd be so cool to sit behind an artist every night and really enjoy the music you're playing, and compliment it, and on and on. And it's funny because I still love it. I love everything about it, and I hope to do it the rest of my life. Like, it's awesome. Um, but at the same time, I was sitting there one day going, man, like, I've gotten to that point. Like, I remember even as a kid playing drums, going, I want to play in a stadium. If I play in a stadium one day, then that'll be awesome.
Hmm.
And I was sitting there thinking about all those like goals that maybe I never wrote down, but were in my head. And um, I was going, man, like, and again, I don't say this to sound any kind of way, but I was like, man, I've kind of like gotten to those goals. Like, I've accomplished a lot of those goals. Like, I need to, um, to set a whole new set of goals because it's so easy to just get comfortable and get
Yes.
and get almost stuck where you are. No matter how
Yeah.
awesome it is what you're doing at the time, you never want to feel stuck. You never want to feel so comfortable because man, that could go away tomorrow. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
could disappear tomorrow. Um, so yeah, man, for me, like as far as the future, I've I've actually been me and a couple buddies have been writing some music together, and
Very
I
cool.
kind of have that thing where, man, it'd be really cool to always do what I'm doing, but also maybe have a band, have some music that I really care about, and just another form of creative outlet, I guess, because it would be completely different from what I do.
Hmm.
And as far as lessons and clinics and writing books or even sitting here on this podcast, it's like this is stuff. If you would have told me 5 years ago that I would have been giving lessons or doing clinics or doing podcasts or any of this, even this was like 5 years into playing with Carrie. But if you would have told me that, I would have gone, "There's no way,"
Hmm.
because it was. I'm not like I don't like public speaking. It
Right.
freaks me out. Like all that stuff scares me to death. So if you would have told me that 5 years ago, I would have gone, "Nope, absolutely not." And now I can say, 5 years later, I get up in front of 100 people and I'll talk about drums or I'll play drums and I'll give a one-on-one lesson or I'll do a podcast and really like now that we're talking about it right here, I'm thinking about it going unbelievable because if I would have never sat down and kind of in my head went, all right, I've got to set this new set of goals. I've got to expand where I'm at and do more. Then I probably wouldn't be sitting here because it really freaked me out. Like
Hmm.
public speaking really, really, I mean, it's still, when I get in my own head, it freaks me out, but I still go and do it,
Right.
because it stretches you as a person. It's such a good thing to be pushed outside of your comfort zone when it comes to music, when it comes to speaking, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to anything. It's so good to be pushed outside of that the norm, the comfort zone that you're in, because that's what you need to grow. So
Wow, very cool, man. There's some really deep stuff that I think everyone listening needs to unravel in their own lives, and that's that no matter where you get, I think you just perfectly described what I was trying to say, and that's that we're always moving towards comfort and away from comfort at the same time in different areas.
right.
And that's really deep, right? It's crazy that as you move towards your area of comfort in playing with Carrie Underwood, which initially would have been ultra uncomfortable and overwhelming. It moved towards comfort, and then you found progressively another area almost found you that was just as uncomfortable as what it would have been, playing with Carrie early on. And now you're venturing into that. And that one day as well will be another thing that will be a notch on your belt that will be comfortable and you'll be reaching again.
That's it. Yeah. That's
So,
exactly right. Hey, can you just like narrate like everything that I say
oh
always?
my gosh, this
I'm
guy.
serious.
Well, we might be doing more of that, which is a little hint for
That's
some
right.
peeps
Yeah.
listening. Guys, I think hopefully you're hearing that Garrett and I have become friends, and I think that the most important thing to take from that isn't like, oh, hey, look at us, we're buddies, we have fun, we talk about drums. It's that you have to work with people that are like-minded. Like if there's any advice that I would try and give for anyone listening to this, it's you gotta find people who you can get on the level with and you're excited to talk to, people that inspire you and challenge you just as much as you feel like you offer that in their relationship. Because that's a real colleague thing. And it's also great to have people who are mentors that you're not on the same level with, but they're a little bit above you in their thinking. And then it's also great to have people that you're inspiring. I feel like if you can have those balanced relationships in your life, it'll keep you teaching what you know receiving new information, and then having buddies to bounce it off of. So, dude, I'm so thankful for your friendship, and the other thing that's cool is it actually makes me want to work that much harder to see you succeed at what you do, because there's like this cool element of camaraderie that happens. So, I hope you guys like understand that if you achieve the wildest dreams, but you don't have people to share that with, and you don't have people that are around you pushing you to go farther, faster, and really explore all your talent, then you're missing it. You're totally missing it. So, that was a really long-winded way to say, dude, I'm grateful for your friendship, man. I'm so grateful for that.
Man. Same here, man.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, dude, on that note, I've asked everything and then some about, the things that I really wanted to ask today. I feel like there's so much more that we could get into with you on the business side, and there's also so many other things that that are going to be some resources that you're going to be rolling out, and you and I might be working on together that it will be really, really cool to share with people. Is there anything else you want to say to everyone listening?
Man, just really listen to everything we've talked about and stick with it, and don't get discouraged, and keep it up. And as far as you and I, like I was saying earlier, it's tangible, man. If people have questions, if people are struggling, anything, man, like contact us, hit us up. Like I'd love to help in any way I can. And as far as clinics and lessons and all that, I love doing all that too. So anyone who's interested in that, please hit me up anytime. I'm all about it. So
amazing, guys. Yes, please hire Garrett. Bring him to your businesses. Bring him to your workshops. Hire him in your town to do a clinic. It does not disappoint. Garrett's stuff on 180 drums is amazing, and if you want to even sample some of that, you can go to our instructors page, click on his lessons, and check that stuff out. Garrett, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way? Why don't you give us your Twitter and Instagram is G Goodwin, so GGOODWIN, so at G Goodwin. How else can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. There, and then my website is GarrettGoodwin.com, and then you can also email at GarrettGoodwinDrums@gmail.com.
Perfect. Great, man. You just gave away your email. I expect
Man, I did, didn't I?
Yeah, it's going to get crazy flooded, man. I love it.
Oh, boy.
Yep. Awesome. But yeah, guys, check that out. Your website's got some great stuff on it, so I definitely encourage everybody to go check that out, get super inspired. And feel free to email Garrett and flood his inbox now that he just made that potentially massive mistake. I love it.
Yeah. We'll see.
You're going to have some probably also going to have some 20-year-old girls hoping that you're single and missing the fact that Natia is your wife. Did I say that right?
Natanya.
No, Natanya. That's exactly what I said, man. Why are you picking on me?
I still get it wrong too sometimes. All right.
That's great. Well, just before we go, why don't you share, to include Natanya in this, why don't you share about what she's up to or something that you're really proud of?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, as far as her, I'm just proud of her in general. But like I was saying earlier, she's working on her own hat line right now. It's actually called Fox and Onyx. So
very cool.
Yeah, she's doing that right now. That's it's kind of her number one thing, and you should be seeing some stuff with that on my Instagram and things like that soon. So yeah, man.
Very cool.
It's all good.
We'll keep in the loop on that. And Onyx, that's ONYX?
Yep.
Fox.
ONYX.
ONYX. Cool, man. Dude, well, listen, we appreciate you so much. I would encourage you guys, let us know what you enjoyed about this podcast. Let us know the things that you didn't enjoy, which shouldn't be anything. You should have just enjoyed this. But let us know what you think, and feel free to message Garrett. Feel free to bombard him. And tell him how great a dude he is, and we want to hear your takeaways. So, guys, check that stuff out. You will see more of Garrett Goodwin. You will see more of his involvement with myself and 180. And dude, we just want to honor you. You're the man.
Appreciate that, man. Thanks for having me on here.
Well, Well, guys, that concludes another episode of the 180 Drums podcast. My name is Jake Nicole, your host. Now, first thing I want to challenge you guys to do is take a chance and reach out to Garrett. He just offered you his email. So his email is garrettgoodwindrums@gmail.com. It's spelled just like it sounds. 2 R's and 2 T's in Garrett and Goodwin. Come on, y'all. You got to be able to spell. And if you don't, feel free to reach out to Garrett's website. And then from there, you can get his email. But if you guys have any questions for me too, my email is jake@180drums.com, Jake. And guys, we're so excited that we get to do this podcast, that we get to offer online drum lessons. I'd encourage all of you to check out the online drum lessons that are available through 180 Drums. We bring in the best drummers in the world like Garrett, and we've got a whole bunch of lessons with him covering pretty much everything you could imagine. We've also got, the drummers of Stevie Wonder, of Paramore, of Drake. It goes on, and we're really investing a lot of time and energy to do this because we love the drums. So y'all, super excited to have you guys on the show. Thank you so much for making this as being truly our second episode, already so successful with a few hundred downloads. So guys, we're honored. We're looking forward to it, and we will see you in the next episode.